Uygur and Kasparian. Down goes Donald. All right, hold on. We're gonna do it right in a second. We're gonna have nothing but fun. Casper, are we gonna have anything but fun?
Yeah, we're gonna have a lot of anything but fun. Definitely, 100%. What are you talking about?
No one gives you raw honesty better than the Young Turks do. So we will have fun. We will have non-fun. We promise both to you guys. And most of all, though, soon we will have change. Okay, come on. The fun has begun already. Stop it. Let's do this. Kasparian.com/go.
That doesn't exist.
That doesn't exist, but it does now.
Kasparian.com exists, but I haven't updated that thing in a while. Cenk likes to have like a steady IV drip of MDMA prior to doing the show with me. Which is why he's so hyped up. But anyway, we do have important stories to share with you. And I'm hoping that in the second half of the show, which I will be hosting with Francesca Fiorentini, we get to the story about what the Senate looks like now that Jon Ossoff and Raphael Warnock have won the Senate runoff races. What does it mean about the power shift and the power dynamic in Congress? It's a really important discussion to have. So I'm looking forward to that. But of course, we have updates on what happened yesterday with these Trump zealots storming the Capitol building, vandalizing the building, threatening members of Congress. A lot of updates on that and more.
All right, let's do it.
All right, sounds good. Let's start off with what happened in Congress yesterday. Vice President Mike Pence has declared Joe Biden the winner of the general election. I really don't know how many more times I need to say that Joe Biden won the general election, but it is now a month and a half out since Election Day. And just yesterday, after domestic terrorists disrupted the certification of the electoral votes, Congress did reconvene in order to officially certify those electoral votes. And so let me give you a little detail, a little video, and we'll discuss. At 3:32 a.m., Pence cited the results for Biden's victory in Vermont, which pushed the Democrat past 270 electoral votes for Congress to confirm him as the next president nearly 15 hours after the joint session began. And here's a little snippet from how that went down yesterday.
The votes for President of the United States are as follows. Joseph R. Biden Jr. of the state of Delaware has received 306 votes. Donald J. Trump of the state of Florida has received 232 votes. The whole number of electors appointed to vote for Vice President of the United States is 538. Within that whole number, a majority is 270. The votes for Vice President of the United States are as follows. Kamala D. Harris of the state of California has received 306 votes. Michael R. Pence of the state of Indiana has received 232 votes. The announcement of the state of the vote by the President of the Senate shall be deemed a sufficient declaration of the persons elected President and Vice President of the United States, each for the term beginning on the 20th day of January, 2021, and shall be entered together with the list of the votes on the journals of the Senate and the House of Representatives.
Now, one more time with relish. Down goes Donald Trump. Down goes Donald Trump. Down goes Donald Trump. So, guys, the upside of Donald Trump conceding, unconceding, never really quite conceding, is that we got to beat him 8 times over. We beat him on election night. We beat him on election week. We beat him in the courts. We beat him in the states. We beat him in the voting booth. We beat him in the marketplace of ideas. And now we finally beat him in Congress. We have beat him silly. I told you, loser Donald. Going out in spectacularly loser fashion, just as predicted. So Donald Trump now completely and utterly out of options. This thing is over. There's nothing left. Yeah. There's not even any conspiracies left. And I told you at the end that he would look for a little bit of a feeling out whether there could be a military option, and they did, just like we told you guys. Michael Flynn went in there, talked about a military option near the end, martial law. Donald Trump had hours of conversations about it at the White House. And at the very, very end, after that option was exhausted, you would have the violence. And there we had it. Yesterday, we had the violence. Well, now that that's done, there's absolutely nothing left other than a swift kick to the posterior of one former president, Donald Trump.
So let me give you the other side of it. First, something to buttress your point and reinforce it. According to the Washington Post, shortly thereafter, Donald Trump, who had defiantly told supporters at a rally that he would never concede, said in a statement that, quote, "There will be an orderly transition on January 20th.
I have been buttressed.
Yeah. But also now I'm going to give you the other side. The other side is Donald Trump is a liar and you shouldn't believe anything he says. The inauguration is still going to take place on January 20th. And based on what we experienced yesterday, I'm a little concerned about whether or not, there's going to be violence there. But one other thing I wanted to mention is this isn't over, Cenk. Maybe, if we're lucky, this particular chapter of Trumpism is over. But remember, tens of millions of Americans, 70 million Americans voted for that guy. 70 million Americans think that guy is fantastic. And I don't think that is going to go away. I think that's something that also needs to be addressed in the coming years. I'm worried that the Biden administration isn't going to, appropriately address some of the fundamental issues we have in this country. But either way, I mean, I guess I'm not as celebratory as you because I'm looking to the future and there are huge questions ahead. And I don't know if this country is willing or ready to address them.
Okay, so Anna, I too am looking at the future and I am bursting with hope. Now, let us acknowledge
I know. You do. You love doing that.
I know.
Which I love. It's good. I love it.
Is that blue I see? Because it certainly ain't red I see. Okay. By the way, one more time, MAGA. Na 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 na. Oh, what was that about an election meltdown? I don't remember us invading the Capitol and breaking things inside and getting people killed. I believe an election meltdown was what we saw yesterday. All right, now back to the buttressing. I appreciate that I have been duly buttressed, and I accept your counterpoints fully. But let me acknowledge and then get past it. So it's true, 74 million Americans did vote for Donald Trump, and they're not going anywhere, and they are largely still on his side, even though he has now lost the overwhelming majority of Republican politicians because the lunacy wound up at their doorstep, right? So it's. The analogy that's often used is Frankenstein, and they did. They built this Frankenstein. They built it through the Southern strategy. They built it through the dog whistles that the Republican Party has been doing for decades. They encouraged racism. They encouraged fear. They encouraged hatred, and they built up a monster that was inevitable. It happened to be Donald Trump, but if it wasn't Donald Trump, it would have been another right-wing populist who came in and did very similar things. So we actually dodged a bullet in a sense. We got lucky that this Frankenstein, they forgot to put the brain in. Okay, so, okay, and next time let's hope they don't get it right. But Anna, you're absolutely right that the establishment has had a hand in building that Frankenstein by not acknowledging the massive problems in this country. Now, the reason that I am hopeful is because I think that there are enough progressives in Congress and there are enough progressive groups out there now and enough power in those progressive groups and legislators that we can begin to make a significant difference. And already, look at this, Cori Bush on day one goes to expel the Republican traitors. The Democratic leadership would have never done that, never. In fact, they didn't love this idea in the first place. But progressives are saying, sorry, sad day for you. If you're not gonna fight them, we're gonna fight them. Okay, so step aside, Butch, we got this. So we will challenge not just the Republicans, we will challenge the corporate Democrats. And when we do, in the new day now, where there is a bigger and stronger online presence, and the media, the mainstream media is having to acknowledge and respond to that presence, we will start to pile up victories. And from now on out, it's going to be a very rough ride. I don't want anybody to get it wrong. Anna's absolutely right. There's massive populism on the right. They're not going to go away. There's populism growing on the left. There's a healthy and then there's an unhealthy version of that populism. But I think out of that muck is going to rise us, all of us together. You guys, us, the people that you have supported, and we're going to grow into a force that challenges the Bidens and the Pelosi's and the Schumers of the world effectively. And finally says, are you going to do this or not? And so going forward, a lot of the show will be about how do we bring that change to you guys? How do we fight every step of the way to make sure that we can get those bills passed that actually affect your lives? But the first and most important step was to make sure we didn't lose the country. And we almost literally had a war on our hands yesterday. And the reason I'm celebrating today is not just because Frankenstein has been put down, but because we have finally gotten past the fascists, so we can now move on to the fight, which arguably has been a longer and harder fight with the establishment. But we would have never gotten to that fight if we'd lost the country to the fascists in the first place. So you should take a minute here to have a sigh of relief and have a drink or whatever you do, and toast the fact that we have retained America. Now we'll move on to perfecting the union.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Republican lawmakers who enabled Donald Trump throughout this entire process, but then immediately changed course once they realized just how bad it is to enable someone like Trump. So we begin with Lindsey Graham. Senator Lindsey Graham decided to abandon the sinking Trump ship following thousands of Trump supporters crowding and then breaching into the Capitol building yesterday. They vandalized congressional offices. They, in some cases, we'll show you video and pictures later, but one individual was shown with zip ties on the House floor. I mean, it was just absolutely horrendous behavior. And Lindsey Graham probably realized, oh, maybe I need to change my tune and abandon Trump right now. And so he did. As you guys know, Congress was certifying the electoral votes. And that was part of the reason why you had this angry Trump mob storming into the Capitol building. Now, after that disruption happened, Congress did reconvene. They finished the process, but before they did so, of course, there were still some GOP lawmakers who spoke out and challenged the electoral votes. Not Lindsey Graham, though. Lindsey Graham decided to go in a different direction. So we're going to show you a little bit of his speech, but I want to be clear about something before we go to it. This is not rehabilitating his image, okay? I want to be as clear as possible about who Lindsey Graham is. Lindsey Graham has no principles. He has no values. In fact, the only thing he values is himself and his own political career. So even though he seems to talk the talk here, do not forget about what he actually represents. Let's take a look.
It is over. The final thing, Joe Biden. I've traveled the world with Joe. I hoped he lost. I prayed he would lose. He won. He's the legitimate president of the United States. I cannot convince people, certain groups, by my words, but I will tell you by my actions that maybe I, above all others in this body, need to say this. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are lawfully elected and will become the president and the vice president of the United States on January the 20th.
So Mr. Tough Guy over there, again, he said what he needed to say. And so I'm happy that he gave the speech that he gave. But I'm not happy with the media essentially forgetting about everything that he has done to aid and abet these false allegations regarding widespread voter fraud. He aided and abetted. In fact, I want to just remind you all about one example, and then we'll go to you, Cenk. Let's take a look at what he had to say when he was on Hannity fairly recently.
I'm here tonight to stand with President Trump. He stood with me. He's the reason we're going to have a Senate majority. My race was overwhelming. He helped Senate Republicans. We're going to pick up House seats because of the campaign that President Trump won. I'm going to donate $500,000 tonight to President Trump's Defense Legal Fund. I've been on your show. You've raised a ton of money for me. Your audience was incredibly helpful. To LindseyGraham.com. Give to DonaldJTrump.com.
What an incredibly embarrassing man. Cenk, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So, look, we needed the Mitch McConnells and Lindsey Grahams of the world for one day to not join a violent coup against the United States of America. The lowest bar in American history. And they eked over it. they like flopped over the bar of, okay, fine, we're not gonna take part in the violent coup and that's a bad idea. Fine, I guess we still have democracy. So great, I'm glad they did that. The certification is 1,000,000,000% over. Now they're totally and utterly useless and they should be attacked at all times. So it's not personal and it's not that we're attacking them because we randomly hate civility. That's what the mainstream media tells you. Oh, like the progressives, they have no real reason to oppose Republicans or corporate Democrats. They just don't like to be civil. What an insane way of thinking. No, you attack Lindsey Graham because number one, the truth matters. And that guy spent 4 years up Donald Trump's ass. And so now when Trump has him exit that orifice and he's swimming around in the pool, I'm not gonna go around going, hey, what a great swimmer, congratulations, Lindsey. No, not congratulations, you're a monster. And you're the most obvious lying hypocrite of all time, as we're about to show you in more videos. And so, no, you don't get any credit. You don't get any credit, Lindsey Graham, you sniveling, lying little coward. And then secondly, as we go forward, there is strategic reasons to fight them. They are going to oppose a $15 minimum wage. They're going to oppose so many things that are going to help you in your life that are actually easy, that the whole country wants, including Republican voters. So since the corporate Democrats and the mainstream media will not do it, it is our job to point out that people like Lindsey Graham hate the average American voter. They hated our democracy in the first place, and now they're gonna try their hardest to deny you healthcare, to deny you higher wages, and when they do, we're gonna be here to kick their ass.
Lindsey Graham suggested throwing out ballots in order to help Donald Trump steal the election. So I don't even consider him a run-of-the-mill Republican lawmaker that we're gonna debate with or battle with when it comes to policy. He's someone that absolutely should be prosecuted right now. He should be investigated for his part in aiding and abetting Donald Trump and his smears and lies regarding this election. Lindsey Graham is absolute garbage and does not deserve any type of leadership role, any type of position of power within our government, because he has proven over and over again that he's only looking out for himself and he's willing to aid and abet anyone, even someone who's trying to dismantle our democratic process or overturn legitimate results of this election for his own political gain. And I do have more video to prove my point on that. So let's go to the next video to give you a sense of just how much Lindsey Graham has played a role in all of this.
President tweeted lynching this morning, comparing it to his impeachment inquiry. What is your reaction to that?
I think that's pretty well accurate. So yeah, this is a lynching in every sense. This is un-American. He keeps telling me that the phone call was perfect. I'm saying, Mr. President, the phone call was okay with me.
I'm a Marine, I went to Iraq, and I believe that you do, that President Trump is not acting in accordance to his oath. You took an identity to defend the Constitution. You took an oath.
Yeah, I did. I don't think
I mean, you have. Is that it?
That's it. That from the time President Trump wakes up till he goes to bed, there's an effort to destroy his presidency.
Looked like a fun day.
It was a fun day, and Trump's the best golfer. You're the best golfer. By far. See, David Perdue is the best golfer, second only to the president.
And when anyone tells you who they are, you should believe them. Lindsey Graham was incredibly transparent about what motivates him, why he decided to become a Trump loyalist after he was elected, when during the Republican primary, he was vicious toward Trump. And during an interview with the New York Times, he said he repeated exactly what I'm saying and accusing him of right now, that he will do whatever it takes for his own political gain. Listen.
I like being relevant, and the way you stay relevant is you stay engaged. There's a lot of space here to take on tough issues because most people shy away from them.
Right. So Lindsey Graham said, like, John and I were relevant together. I mean, it was like we're sharing a meal together. We're sharing a value system together, and that value system was relevance. And I was confused by the word. I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, relevant is like in the middle of everything. Relevant is you're making a difference.
It means that during the time in which you possess political influence and power, use it.
Yeah, and the question that was posed to him in that interview was, how do you reconcile the fact that Donald Trump was so vicious to your good friend John McCain, and now you seem to side with Donald Trump on everything? And he answered with that, with that statement about how relevance is more important to him than doing the right thing, really. So that's who Lindsey Graham is.
Yeah, look, the last thought on this is I'm curious how the rest of the media is going to handle this. Our job is to seek out truth and to share it with you to the best of our ability. So we're never going to mince our words. Lindsey Graham is a liar through and through, the world's biggest hypocrite. You saw that with what they did with the Supreme Court. You saw Lindsey Graham vociferously opposing Donald Trump before the election. You saw him kissing his ass during his 4 years, and then you saw him at the end saying, Donald Trump, what name so? No, Biden's president, everything's good. I don't have anything to do with this violence, right? Sure. No, you fed that wolf, Lindsey Graham. That's the wolf you chose to feed, and you did it for your own ambition, and you even admitted it. So will the rest of the media go back to giving him credibility? Will they go back to saying, oh, my assumption is that Lindsey Graham is telling the truth and that he has an ideology and that he's trying to act it within his principles? Because if they make that assumption, they are lying to you on purpose. They know just as well as we know, and you saw it with your own eyes, that Lindsey Graham does not have any principles. He's a lying hypocrite, weaselly politician who just wants to be quote unquote relevant, okay? So media, it's on you guys. If your set assumption is that politicians tell the truth, that has not been borne out by the facts. And the American people don't believe that, and they are right. If you continue to assume that politicians like Lindsey Graham are telling the truth, well, then you're not really reporters. You just aren't. You're people who help the powerful spread their propaganda. Your base assumption should be that people like Lindsey Graham are lying, and they have to prove to you that they're telling the truth, because that is a far more correct and factual assumption. If you don't go off of that, it's just that you've chosen that you don't want to do hard-hitting journalism. You want to accommodate power. And look, the good news is we don't know which way the media is going to go. They did get tougher with Trump. They did get tougher with power at the end. Are they going to continue that? Or are they going to go back to bowing their heads to Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, and Lindsey Graham? Well, we're about to find out real soon.
When we come back from the break, we'll discuss how the right wing, both in politics and the media, are trying to blame what happened yesterday in the Capitol on Antifa. So we'll give you the details on that and more. Don't miss it. And for those of you who are just tuning in, Francesca Fiorentini will be joining me for hour 2. Come right back.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be, featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity. The UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFDR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
Back during the break. So first of all, I'd shout out names of people who just joined as YouTube members, but there's 175 of you that joined today. So, but starting now, we'll start keeping track of the names again and putting them out there for you guys. Hit the join button below. You guys are awesome. You power our show, and we are going to bring you change all together. And I'm absolutely hopeful about the future, as I explained in the first segment. And you guys are making that happen. If you're watching anywhere else, of course, tyt.com/join. If you're watching on Twitch, remember twitch.tv/tyt. If you have Amazon Prime, it's free for you guys. So just take a minute, even if you don't normally watch on Twitch, to go there, find us at TYT. And if you sub through Amazon Prime, it doesn't cost you anything, but we still get the revenue. So that's great. Speaking of which, Naughty KO gifted 5 subs. AJ Duenas again gifted 5 subs. And Mania Crash Ellie gifted 7 subs, gave 1,000 bits. Not Too Enthused was enthused enough to become a new member and also gifted a sub. DJ 80 gifted 5 subs. A Tropy, Brandy U, both 5 subs. Green Bean, Squirrel 1964, Cherry Potter, Steam Crush, all joined, all members. The Meat Kebab gave 2,000 bits. I mean, I'd like to take a kebab, but I'll take the 2,000 bits. You guys are amazing. Imagine eating that kebab on a hype train. How does it get better than that? Okay. So now let's go to Super Chat. Capca says, please shout out to the hero, my representative, Jamie Raskin. He just lost his son, but then he led the certification and has to deal with the clown coup. So Jamie Raskin is wonderful. He's not one of the loudest progressives, but he's certainly one of the smartest, most strategic, and he's been wonderful throughout. So there's some great Congress people there finally after all these years. And by the way, you know who helped get him elected? You guys did. And Representative Raskin always remembers that. He said at the very end of his election, when we did a segment about it, all of a sudden all these volunteers poured in, donations came in, and he's always been grateful to you guys. So I wanted you to know that. And I love that that you're looking out for him too. Okay, now I'm gonna give you more here. Inwolf makes a good point on the Super Chat. How long did Trump stick around after he told his mob, "I'll be there with you"? His supporters should know he lied to them and used them and then ran away. That's totally right. I was thinking, oh really? Are you gonna go in like Bane, right? And lead your mob of angry, deranged lunatics through the Capitol? No, of course he said, oh, you do it. Oh, you guys get arrested for it. You guys face serious charges for it. And I'm gonna slink out the back door. Classic Trump. Great point by Inwolf. Love doing the show with you guys. And Lisa Chapman with a great point. Trump and others responsible must be held accountable for their actions, and they're accessory to these things that have happened, period. Right there with you, sister. You knowing Biden, there's almost no chance that anybody will be held accountable. It is what it is, but we'll put pressure on to try to make that happen. The Young Turks members will have more of your comments next time around. We'll be right back. right, guys, we're back on the Young Turks. Cenk and Anna with you guys. Don't forget, on the 18th day that we fired Donald Trump, we have the awesome You're Fired t-shirts on shoptyt.com. And I wore that out this morning, and a cash register lady at the grocery store was like, love the shirt. Where do I get that shirt? I can't get enough of it, okay? So shoptyt.com. By the way, I got a package from shoptyt today, and it said, from the thugs at shoptyt.com.
Oh my God. All right, you ready for the next story?
Right. Yes, let's do the next story.
All righty. The right-wing Trump enablers who rushed to find ways to blame others for what happened yesterday, of course, are feeling a little guilty about the fact that they decided to enable Donald Trump, amplify his unfounded claims of widespread voter fraud for their own political gain, for their own fundraising. And so let's start off with Matt Gaetz, because Matt Gaetz tried to twist things in the direction toward the left, even though everyone saw video footage of the sea of red MAGA hats. Everyone saw the signs, everyone saw the Trump flags, but Matt Gaetz is trying to place the blame on a different group of people. Let's watch.
We really don't know who is behind this. I guess you could call these, for lack of a better word, Antifa-like tactics. We don't know if Antifa is out there.
You're going to see that 99% of this was all peaceful, and a handful of folks, and again, we've got to get to the bottom of who they are, who they're representing, decided to try and kick the doors down.
If Antifa was there, we need to root it out and to make sure that that's called out, because it shouldn't be blamed on groups that weren't responsible.
I heard those reports too about possible Antifa infiltration.
There have been reports that there were instigators. There is no evidence or proof.
We also knew that there's always bad actors that will infiltrate large crowds.
And we had the reports that groups like Antifa, other radical groups, I don't know the names of all of them, that they were there to cause trouble.
Some pretty compelling evidence from a facial recognition company showing that some of the people who breached the Capitol today were not Trump supporters. They were masquerading as Trump supporters, and in fact, were members of the violent terrorist group Antifa.
A lot of it is the media's fault. But Martha, keep in mind, we don't know who all were the instigators in this, of these horrible things that happened today. I think a lot of it is the Antifa folks. I don't know, there's a lot of questions out there, and I wish we could trust the media to do its job, to go research, report who all these people are.
All right, so Matt Gaetz was sprinkled in there along with other conservative media figures and politicians who tried to blame this on Antifa, even though there's absolutely no evidence of that. In fact, Andy Ngo, who never passes an opportunity to blame something on Antifa, decided to just clearly state on social media that no, this ain't Antifa. But nonetheless, I also want to give you some other insane conspiracy theory that was floated by people like Gaetz. The Washington Times apparently reported a false story that was cited by Gaetz. The Washington Times report cited by Gaetz and others claimed that a retired military officer had sent the newspaper a facial recognition analysis of rioters by a technology firm called XR Vision. Those claims were echoed by an unsupported story by the conspiracy hawking right-wing site Gateway Pundit, claiming that at least one busload, they love buses, they always love to cite buses, one busload of Antifa thugs infiltrated peaceful Trump demonstrators as part of a false Trump flag operation. Okay, so that company, by the way, came out and released a statement. A facial recognition company says that viral Washington Times Antifa story is false. Matt Gaetz had cited the story in Congress as supposed evidence that Antifa was involved in the Capitol assault, but the company says it's outright false. Because of course it is. We know exactly what happened yesterday. Let me just say, there have been some people online, I don't know what their political affiliation is. I'm guessing they're on the right wing. But this argument that, these domestic right-wing terrorists who stormed into the Capitol building, proceeded to vandalize property. It led to a shelter-in-place order for members of Congress. It's the same thing, exact same thing as the Black Lives Matter protests. But let's be clear about first of all, the nature of what they did. There was a noose that they put up right in front of the Capitol building. There were pipe bombs found. There were all sorts of just incredibly depressing and terrifying things that went down yesterday, none of which were seen during the Black Lives Matter protests. And also, Black Lives Matter protesters were protesting about a legitimate problem in this country, the brutality that's been committed by police across the country. And it affects Black people disproportionately, but it also, of course, impacts everyone. That type of policing is something that needs to be discussed and needs to be addressed. What these Trump supporters were doing yesterday was they were attempting to overturn the results of the election, essentially throw out the results of the election because they don't like the fact that their dear leader wasn't reelected. They don't like the fact that the majority of American voters decided to fire him and kick him out of the White House. So since they didn't get what they wanted, they decided to show up to the Capitol building and try to get what they wanted through force. And of course, they're gonna fail in doing that. But whether or not they succeed or fail doesn't matter. What matters is what their intent was, what they were intending to do. And there's no question that the underlying motivation here is to essentially completely ignore our democratic process in order to get what they want. And you can't compare that to a legitimate protest like Black Lives Matter.
Okay, so let me break down the pattern of how this works. So the Washington Times now has retracted that story about Antifa, but it is not stopping any of the conservatives on social media. That is where it began, but they then keep repeating it as if the Washington Times has not retracted the story and the company did not come out with a statement saying that it was patently false. So after all of their believers believe it, they then turn around and say, well, I mean, so many people believe it, we have to, assume it's true. No. You're the one who spread the lies in the first place. You can't then turn around. Marco Rubio did the same thing today about the election. He said, well, I mean, look, there's so many people who, and you've seen 1,000 Republicans do this. So many people believe that the election was stolen and it was fraudulent. So we have to respect them. And I'm really angry at Joe Biden's speech, which was divisive, because it doesn't respect the people who did not riot, but genuinely believe the election was stolen. Whether that's true or untrue, it doesn't matter. Since we lied to them and got them to believe that it was stolen, you have to respect their idea that it's stolen. You have to cater to their feelings. And so in order to not be divisive, you have to hug them and say, oh, that's such a good point about the election being stolen. Oh, that's such a good point about how Antifa instead of Trump supporters did this. No, it is not good points. It is purposeful lies done by people like Matt Gaetz. And I'll give Gaetz credit. He's smart. He knows that he's 100% lying. He knows that. He's not like Trump. Trump's a delusional, low IQ person with real derangement issues, like significant mental and psychological issues. Matt Gaetz is just an opportunist. He's like, oh, you know how I get more popular in the right wing? I lie to them. They love it. They love it. If I tell them Antifa did this, even though they see everybody with the QAnon things and the Confederate flags and the MAGA hats, they'll believe anything. And then they'll think I'm a hero for lying to them. And he has correctly assessed that pattern and that phenomenon. Now, important thing. Remember, Gaetz is the one who encouraged all this in the first place. He's the one that led the Congress people to bust into a private meeting in Congress. You remember that? Okay. So they began by saying, we don't care about the law. We don't care about order. We don't care about privacy. We don't care about boundaries. So they broke down a door to get into that private meeting in Congress and they filmed it and laughed about it. And nothing was ever done. So now, is it surprising that Gaetz is excusing the actions of the people who broke down the front door to come in and do violence? It's exactly what Gaetz encouraged, and he must be thrilled about how it turned out because it's helping his political career. And that's how Matt Gaetz thinks. Now, one more thing, guys, this is about projection. When they say, hey, there might be plants in the crowd, you know why they say that? It's actually an old CIA tool. That's true. You could look it up. The CIA would plant people in the crowd in foreign countries to agitate and pretend that they're on the other side and cause violence. And so the right wing has always known that and has from time to time actually done that here in America. Nixon used to do it all the time. Again, you could read any book about it. You could look it up online. It has a clear history of the right wing doing that in other countries and in this country. So when they see the right wing doing the violence, they go, it must have been the left wing plants, because that's what we would do. We would plant people in the crowd to cause violence and then blame it on them. It might be interesting if we ever had anyone on the left who could actually even think of something like that. But usually it's the Machiavellian guys on the right who do it. Not usually, every time it's them. So there is no truth to Antifa infiltrating MAGA. That's insanity. And I'm sorry, one more thing, Anna. The privilege that they have is unbearable. I don't know if you guys saw that video yesterday of this woman named Elizabeth, where she had gotten maced as she was going in the building. One of the few people that police apparently took any action to bar from the building. And she was crying, like she couldn't believe that she got maced for breaking and entering and smashing the door and trying to trespass into Congress. She was like, I was just trying to break in. And they
No, it was the most shocking. I mean, she was so shocked that there were consequences for breaking into the Capitol building. Like shocked that she was pepper sprayed. Absolutely shocked. And look, we talked about the policing yesterday, but we're gonna talk about it again today because I think it's important to really discuss how the establishment is using what happened yesterday as an excuse to not only continue funding law enforcement, but to ramp up funding to law enforcement. Matt Iglesias tweeted something along those lines today, which I find absolutely disgusting, because we know without a shadow of a doubt that we have more than enough funding in our security state, in our surveillance state. That is not the problem. The problem here is, why were the cops in this case outmanned? Why did it appear that they were unprepared? What was going on behind the scenes? Now, I know I say unprepared and people get upset, right? But it appears that this is
At TYT, we frequently talk about all the ways that big tech companies are taking control of our online lives, constantly monitoring us and storing and selling our data. But that doesn't mean we have to let them. It's possible to stay anonymous online and hide your data from the prying eyes of big tech. And one of the best ways is with ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN hides your IP address, making your activity more difficult to trace and sell to advertisers. ExpressVPN also encrypts 100% of your network data to protect you from eavesdroppers and cyber criminals. And it's also easy to install. A single mouse click protects all your devices. But listen, guys, this is important. ExpressVPN is rated #1 by CNET and Wired magazine. So take back control of your life online and secure your data with a top VPN solution available, ExpressVPN. And if you go to expressvpn.com/TYT, you can get 3 extra months for free with this exclusive link just for TYT fans. That's expressvpn.com/TYT. Check it out today.
Exactly what they were planning on doing, which is allowing these Trump supporters to just, break into the Capitol building and do what they did. I mean, they were so emboldened, Cenk. They weren't even covering their faces. Okay, yeah. They didn't have to hide their identities. They're talking to reporters all willy-nilly, giving their first and last names, where they're coming from, like that woman Elizabeth that you just cited. And that is a sense of entitlement that gives you, I think all the proof that you need that there is a significant difference in policing toward certain movements like Black Lives Matter and Trump fanatics and zealots who don't want to accept the outcome of the general election. And look, yes, I believe race has a lot to do with it, but also keep in mind, the police see BLM as their enemies. They do, because it's all about defunding police. It's all about rooting out the rot that leads to the excessive force and brutality that so many people are experiencing across the country today. So they see BLM as enemies. That's why, they'll be ready. They'll be ready for that kind of protest. But when it comes to people who are Trump sycophants and who have defended the police historically, come right in. Let's open the barricades for you. It's disgusting.
Yeah. Well, there's literal video of the police opening the barricades to let the right-wing rioters in. And there it is. And so, have you ever seen? And there's a guy on the other side. Come on in, everybody. We're having a riot. Have you ever seen the police open barricades for African-American protesters or left-wing protesters for peace? Never. All we get is the baton the mace, and oftentimes guns, and certainly water cannons. No water cannons to be found here. And let's give you the facts. Only a third of the Capitol Police were used. Why? I mean, I cannot imagine a day where you would need the Capitol Police more than the day that the president said, why don't you come down to Washington and let's do something about a so-called stolen election? Well, what the hell did you think was gonna happen? And so, but to them, Anna, this is the most important part. To them, when they see white right-wingers, they assume good guys. As somebody I empathize with. For the cops, it's like, that's my bro. That's my bro. So I open the barricades for them. Oh, we don't need a lot of cops. It's just good white people, just good right-wingers. They're good patriots. They won't do anything wrong except storm the building, get people killed, etc. But when they see black people, or they see left wing, they think, not me. I don't empathize. I assume bad guys.
Right, of course.
That's the core of the problem with policing. One more thing, Anna, sorry.
No, but I gotta add to that before you keep going. It's also the ties. I mean, this has been well documented, well studied. Just the amount of known white supremacists who have infiltrated local police departments throughout the country. I would be shocked if they hadn't done that with, DC police as well. It's there. It's a real problem, right? And so BLM has a legitimate issue that they're bringing to the table that they want to do something about, and they're met with violence because the very people who are policing these situations are the ones that they want to change. So anyway, continue. I just wanted to add that.
Last thing. When Black Lives Matter did a similar protest, except with no violence, at the Capitol a little while back, 5 times as many cops were there as yesterday. Now, they had brought in people outside of the Capitol Police. They brought in all these different departments because they're like, oh my God, there's gonna be black people here. Ooh, that sounds so dangerous. Lots and lots of black people. Was it actually dangerous? No, but they had an army there to meet black folks who were exercising their First Amendment right and didn't do any of this nonsense. The right wing, there it is. That's a literal shot from that day, okay? When white right-wingers who say they have weapons and who are saying they don't want this democracy to get certified and that they will do anything to make sure it doesn't, can't find any cops. Capitol Police, what name so? People in military fatigues, can't find any. But what we could find cops opening the gates for the rioters. So if you can't see that double standard, you're trying super hard not to see it.
We got to take a break. We'll be right back.
All right, back on the Young Turks. There's so many comments that I want to read. Linda Rivera wrote in on Super Chat, Cenk, I happen to be a Raytheon employee who also supports the progressive movement and TYT. I think the work that I do with the company is valuable to our society. You seem to demonize corporations as if they shouldn't exist. I feel torn. Thoughts? No, Linda, not at all. Actually, a very close family member of mine works at Boeing. And so And the district I ran in has tons of those contractors, and they have employees that work on great projects related to advanced science, related to satellites, et cetera. But I don't want them buying our government. I don't want them contributing millions of dollars. And then, yes, unfortunately, the main product is defense, and so-called defense. It's actually offensive weapons. So do we need defensive weapons? Yes. Do we need as many as we have? Absolutely not. Is it because of the corruption due to their political donations? Absolutely. So Raytheon should exist, Boeing should exist, but they should not be able to contribute to and hence buy our politicians. So, but thank you for asking for the clarification. Pamela Barboto, Stephanie McKinney, Amber Bridges, Lala Bella, all just joined, hitting the join button below on YouTube. And Cheryl Kopp and Quinn Wolf also upgraded their membership. You can do that with the same button. Everyone else, well, actually, it's just you guys on Twitch that see this. So Haggis the Dragon, AKA Progressive Pirate, writes in our member section, did you see the guy that brought the zip tie handcuffs? Trump sent them to kidnap and possibly murder his own vice president and Congress members. Now look, I don't think that Trump was that specific, but did he threaten Pence over and over again in that rally? Yes. And did he say, hey, everybody go down to the Capitol now? Yes. And was Pence worried for his life? Yes. Is he actually now super mad at Trump? Yes. There's a report out. Even remember Inhofe? Inhofe used to be the most insane right-wing senator. He's from Oklahoma. He's the main opponent of doing anything about climate change. He works for the oil companies, basically. Even Inhofe was like, I've never seen Pence so mad. And what Trump did was outrageous because they actually worried about Pence's well-being. That it's I've never.
They're worried. Yeah, they're worried about their well-being. They're worried about their well-being.
100%.
Their well-being. They're not worried about our well-being. They're not worried about our democracy. They're not worried about the Constitution. They're worried about their well-being. People showed up to their house.
All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Anna, take it away.
All right. Well, now that a day has passed, the FBI is asking for any information regarding the identities of individuals who were part of the angry, violent mob that breached the Capitol building and then proceeded to vandalize congressional offices and threaten congressional lawmakers who had to evacuate and then shelter in place. Pipe bombs were found near the RNC and the DNC. There was even a Molotov cocktails found in a cooler, showing you what kind of weapons they were planning on using. Luckily, they didn't use those weapons. They were found by authorities ahead of time. But there was one woman who was shot within the Capitol building. Right now, it appears that she was shot by DC police, and unfortunately, she died. But I do also want to talk a little bit about the people that were identified already, because I think it is important to have a fair justice system in the country. We know full well that if a person of color decided to break into the Capitol building and it wasn't tied to throwing out our system of government in support of Donald Trump, maybe the situation would be a lot different. But nonetheless, here's who we know were there because they were brazenly live streaming and bragging about being there. There's the white nationalist Baked Alaska, who I'm proud to have ignored up until now. But his real name is Tim Giannett, better known as Baked Alaska. He's a white nationalist activist and was among the insurrectionists who stomped the US Capitol on Wednesday and breached security to enter. Giannett also streamed more than 20 minutes of his activity inside the Capitol building on the blockchain service DLive, and 16,000 people were watching him live as he was doing it. Let's take a look at this tweet that gives you some stills of what his live stream looked like. Noted Nazi white supremacist Baked Alaska is streaming from inside the Capitol building office, writes Brandon Wall on Twitter. Nathan Bernard also shared some information about who was there. Holocaust denier Nick Fuentes and neo-Nazi loser Baked Alaska both live streamed from Pelosi's office after storming the Capitol. Neither have been arrested. And to give you some more info on all this, at one point, according to Insider, he suggested he would sleep inside a lawmaker's office. He's talking about Baked Alaska here, and use the desk phone to call President Donald Trump. At another point in the stream, a police officer inside the building appeared to be taking selfies with the rioters, a video that we showed you guys. And then one other thing for all the right wingers who are trying to pin this on the left or Antifa, I want to show you one of the people who decided to be part of this disgusting effort. He's wearing a shirt, a hoodie specifically, that says Camp Auschwitz. Just giving you a sense of what Trump and his supporters represent. Absolutely disgusting, hideous behavior, and there should be consequences for this. Absolutely, this was criminality, and they should be held to the same standards as anyone else who would do the exact same thing.
Well, I have a little bit of breaking news on this too, Anna. But before I get there, let me just note, this is a side note, but really important. That sweatshirt about Camp Auschwitz, it's not an outlier. People that have talked to MAGA guys, including Walter Masterson, who I interviewed here, but many others too. They say both on camera, but especially when you turn the camera off, when you ask them who's really at fault, they say the Jews. So watch out. Over the next 4 years, anti-Semitism is going to be, unfortunately, on a significant rise as this far right-wing guys get more and more angry, more and more frustrated. And the Trumps of the world keep feeding them lies about how, the elites are controlling their lives, not through the normal things like campaign contributions, et cetera, which actually is true, but through like, the Jews and Soros, et cetera, and they're manipulating the immigrants against you, all this nonsense, and they're believing it. So that's a really dangerous, toxic stew that they're cooking up there. Now, the breaking news is CNN just interviewed, their correspondent Elle Reeve just interviewed one of the MAGA guys who had broken into the Capitol. She asked, why'd you do it? Well, first thing he said was, well, Rudy told us to do trial by combat. So we did trial by combat. There you go, okay? But then he went on to say this. So now, mind you, these guys are pretending that, maybe it was Antifa. No, MAGA all the way through. And earlier in the show, we talked about the cops and how they opened the gates. Anna talked about how they were taking selfies just a minute ago. Well, here's the guy's direct quote about the cops. This is one of the guys who broke in. The cops were very cool. Apparently they told him, quote, hey guys, have a good night. And remember, a lot of them on their way out, after they had broken in, after they had caused the violence, after they'd caused chaos, they were just escorted out of the building, not arrested. Unbelievable. And then one more quote from the guy who broke in. He said, it's crazy, very weird. You can see that some of them are on our side, referring to the cops. Yeah. Indeed, I can, and that's part of the problem. And finally, today, Rush Limbaugh, on his way out, is trying to foment as much violence and get as many people hurt as possible. He talked on his show about how some right wingers are backing away from these protesters and rioters because they were violent. And he says he is not one of them, and he's glad that the American revolutionaries resorted to violence, and that you have to do that in some circumstances. So that's who the right wing is. They naturally gravitate to violence because they would rather have power than justice.
I also want to just quickly note, going back to the man wearing the Auschwitz hoodie. Yeah, there was a guy wearing an Auschwitz hoodie. I have no doubt that there's anti-Semitism within this group of rabid Trump supporters. But some of you might have also noticed in wide shot photos of the crowd that there were also, I spotted at least one Israeli flag, which I just don't get it. Like, I don't get how you could have so much pride and love for Israel and then associate yourself with a group of people who are openly anti-Semitic, so much so that one of them feels comfortable enough to celebrate what happened in Auschwitz. Like, it's unbelievable. But also I wanted to note in regard to the police, this is also a breaking story from Kristen Wilson over at CNN. She writes on Twitter that a US Capitol police officer involved in the riots at the Capitol yesterday has died. That's according to 2 USCP sources. So we also know that aside from that one woman getting shot and killed within the Capitol building, 3 other protesters died from what was referred to as medical emergencies. But I don't know what that means. I don't know what the details of those medical emergencies are, but people did die from what took place yesterday.
Yep. All right, let's do the next story.
All right. So, Cenk, you have wanted to talk about the 25th Amendment quite a bit, and now we get to talk about it in detail. So, Trump administration officials have been considering invoking the 25th Amendment for Trump following the violent mob that broke into the Capitol building yesterday and proceeded to vandalize congressional offices. And of course, Congress had to evacuate and shelter in place until it took hours for cops to finally get control of this crowd. Now, officials, according to The Hill, have exchanged calls and messages about the extraordinary measure, which would require a majority of cabinet officials plus Vice President Pence to declare to Congress that Trump is unable to fulfill his duties as president. By the way, we're hearing more and more from Trump administration officials who believe that he's mentally unstable and unfit to be in office. The discussions appear to be limited, and it's not clear whether they have reached the level of any cabinet officials. It's not clear that officials would actually move forward with invoking the 25th Amendment, or that enough cabinet members would even support it, particularly given Trump has only 2 weeks left in office. So one White House official says that Mike Pence has not been contacted about this effort. So that's according to what was reported by The Hill today. Who knows if things have changed since then? But I think that, the 25th Amendment made a lot of sense way earlier in his first term. But of course, Trump administration officials have always been afraid of him. They won't stand up to him, and they know what the consequences will be if they even try. So unfortunately, this is an effort that I think came a little too late, but we'll see what happens.
So let me give you some updates on that too. So first of all, CBS's Margaret Brennan reporting that there was at least one cabinet official that was definitely talking about and considering using the 25th Amendment. So it's not just assistants or some sources close to cabinet officials. It's the cabinet officials themselves. So Mike Pence is reported as furious at Donald Trump. And thinks that, of course, he's got stability issues. Look, the guy declared himself very stable. Only unstable people do that. They've all known it all along, but now it's just blowing back on them. Anna made a great point at some point in today's show. Look, the only reason why all these Republicans are upset and everybody in Washington is upset is because finally the violence came to their doorstep. When the right wing was attacking synagogues, they were attacking immigrant communities. They were trying to blow up buildings, and they were trying to murder the governor of Michigan. Unconcerned. When it shows up at their doorstep and their lives are a little bit in danger, oh my God, did you know that this is dangerous? Yes, we've been telling you that all along. But since it affected the cabinet officials and the vice president, that is part of the reason that they were considering using it. Also because a source told CNN that is a close Republican, a Republican close to the president who talks to him on a regular basis, saying he believes the president is now, quote, out of his mind. And everybody in the White House is worried that Donald Trump is going to provoke more violence And if he does that, they don't know what to do with him. And remember, it looks like when the Defense Department came to Trump and said, will you please order the National Guard in to restore order? Trump said no on multiple occasions. What is unclear is who actually gave the order to actually bring the National Guard in. It looks like it was Pence. That means in effect, they've actually already used the 25th Amendment, even if they didn't go through the legal process. Now think about it, guys. There's only 2 weeks left, so why would you bother doing it? But imagine if we were attacked now. Imagine if there was an emergency, something that happened where another country did something to us. Do you think the military should go to Donald Trump, who's clearly deranged at this point? Hell no, they should not go to Trump. They should go to Pence. And so the 25th Amendment is real. They should act on it. And he's also so unstable, they're worried that they're all gonna go to jail. Let me give you one quote here that's really important from a recent Vanity Fair story. And then I'll tell you, unfortunately, why probably the 25th Amendment is not gonna happen, okay? All these are important. So quoting Vanity Fair now, the West Wing staffer told a friend that the White House counsel, Pat Cipollone, was urging White House officials not to speak to Trump or enable his coup attempt in any way so they could reduce the chance that they could be prosecuted for treason under the Sedition Act. Quote, they're being told to stay away from Trump. Now, if in the White House, there's an order by the White House counsel to stay away from the president, because if you talk to him, you might be tried for treason. Well, obviously we can't have the president fulfill his duties. So they should definitely do the 25th Amendment, even if there's only 2 weeks left. But having said all that, here's your most important indicator. Elaine Chao, who's a cabinet member and who's married to Mitch McConnell, is saying that she's going to resign. Now, if there was going to be a 25th Amendment, Elaine Chao would have to stay to vote against Trump, because now Mitch McConnell's furious with Trump and she's part of the establishment. She always has been, and she would vote against Trump. She's leaving. That's an act of both fake objection to what Trump did and also to get the hell out of this so she doesn't have to vote on the 25th Amendment. So that means it probably will not happen. And why? Because of the coward Republican establishment led by Mitch McConnell, and in a lot of ways, Elaine Chao, who's been in the cabinet of nearly every Republican president of my lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, they're such cowards, and they've enabled everything that we've experienced under the Trump administration. In some cases, they went even further than enabling. In some cases, they absolutely supported and played an active role in accomplishing some of the horrific things that Donald Trump has wanted to do, including, yes, his viciousness at the border, the ridiculous trade wars that he engaged in that didn't actually amount to anything, that improved manufacturing jobs in this country. I mean, the right wing has been horrible all the way through Trump's term. And it doesn't surprise me that, of course, rather than holding him accountable in the last minute, they're going to go ahead and jump ship or try to do whatever they can to rehabilitate their own reputations. But I'm not buying it. I know exactly what they are. And as I've said before, I'm going to say it again. All of these Republican strongmen who pretend like they're all about, national security and doing what it takes to protect this country, all of them were easily castrated by Donald Trump, who's perhaps the stupidest person I have ever seen in politics, and that's saying something. There are some pretty dim individuals that we've experienced. But with that said, we do have to take a break, and when we come back, Francesca Fiorentini will join us to discuss the very GOP enablers who still decided to challenge the electoral votes yesterday after right-wing extremists stormed the Capitol building. And later in the show, we'll also talk about who else is quitting from Trump's administration. We'll be back.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of the Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.